I'm delighted to welcome back Rosalyn Palmer, who is a transformational coach, therapist, author and broadcaster. Welcome, Ros.
Lovely to see you, Elaine. Lovely to be here.
So since we last spoke, you've moved house, you've got a whole menagerie of animals, and you've got your lovely garden shack where you do recordings and you're speaking from now. So give us a description of how your life has changed in the last few months.
Yes, so I came to a relationship after 2 marriages and 2 divorces, and he'd also had 2 marriages and 2 divorces. I did dating in my 50s, which I wrote about, and he's in his 60s. And last year, when we went into lockdown number 1, we decided to do the great relationship lockdown experiment, because we'd both had our own homes and really only seen each other at weekends, and it worked. So in November of last year, I moved from my townhouse in the middle of Newark, in the middle of everywhere, to the middle of the countryside in Lincolnshire. And I'm now on a 3-acre small holding. And we've got sheep, because I was bought 6 sheep for my birthday. I've got Jane, Virginia, Charlotte, Mary, Harper, and Agatha, named after the 6 best-selling female novelists of all time. We think most of them are pregnant because we've got Martin Ram on loan. So we're about to do very late lambing, which I'm reading lambing books and watching every episode of Country File and Life on the Farm that I can see. I've got turkeys, chickens. We've just had loads of chickens. We've got about 15 and some turkey chicks. I've got dogs and cats. I'm looking at a duck drinking the water over by the bird feeder at the moment. And yeah, I live in wellies quite a lot, and I'm getting a dab hand at mucking things out, and it's fantastic therapy. It's absolutely the best thing. And yeah, and I love my late 50s relationship. So I've had a complete change really of life, and it's just right for me now. It's perfect.
Wonderful. And you're certainly glowing in the process. Very glamorous.
Yeah, I've got this lovely garden office, as you say. So I was always jealous of yours, Elaine. You set me off because you used to have that one. And when I went into it, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I must get me one of those one day. And surely enough, I did. So I have this fantastic office literally at the end of the garden, and my little house. And it's my little TARDIS. It all goes on here. And it's lovely in a way because I can switch off as well. I commute across the lawn. I open the door, I go, honey, I'm home. And he'll go, how's the commute? I go, oh, it's terrible walking across that lawn. It's good. I'm walking my talk. I talk about that life of balance and being in nature and working, but also having all the other things that you need in your life. And I'm really living it, Elaine. So yeah, I'm very happy.
Brilliant. And how is your transformation with coaching and therapy coming along? Because last time we spoke, you had a few things that you were lining up with all this transition that was going on in your life. So bring us up to date on what you're doing now?
Yeah, I've been a transformational coach and therapist for probably 4 or 5 years. I've been a therapist for 6 years. And more because I did I have a background in marketing. So I did the classic, who is my target client? Who do I really resonate with? Who do I bring, the best of me to the best of them? And I used to call her Burnt Out Barbara or Bob. And I really realized last year that the story I was telling, which is that I'd come from a place of burnout and overwhelm, wasn't entirely true. Because when I sold my PR business back in 2000, I walked away with what I thought was the big prize. And it was only a year after that I moved to the Bahamas. And it was only a year after that the cancer came and my life kind of imploded. So I realized that I'd laid the seeds of the damage, but actually, in terms of how I looked and operated, I hadn't really suffered from burnout, but I certainly had been incongruent with how my whole heart and inside felt and how my external life looked. And there was a mismatch really between how my life looked and operated on the outside and how I felt and lived it on the inside. And so I started talking last year about that more. And it was a bit like Field of Dreams, you know, if you build it, they will come. And it clearly resonated with, you know, a lot of people, particularly high flyers, but not entirely only high flyers, but people whose lives look like it is all going on the outside. But it you know, like the Jack Nicholson film, Is This As Good As It Gets? That was how it was feeling on the inside. And so I've switched really from primarily identifying myself as a therapist who helps people with therapeutic issues and burnout and emotional, physical issues. Of course, I still am that person, but I'm really now identifying as being a transformational coach that will take people on a longer journey to really give them that joy and balance back in their life. And that isn't just a kind of a one-off session fix. It's really a longer process. But I'm bringing 30 years of having done that process on myself, if you like, because it started for me in the 90s when I worked with Tony Robbins. And it's obviously come through not only my own life journey and cancer and issues I've had to come through, it's also because of my training. So yes, there has been a transition for me, but it feels absolutely right. And it truly is resonating with the people I'm working with.
Wonderful. And I can see behind you a reminder of the book that you've written, Reset, isn't it called?
Yes.
Reset.
Yes, it's 3 years old this year. Can you believe it? So I'd like to say, because I'm seeing a lot of things about the Great Reset and resetting the world, that I wrote that 3 years ago. So I think there must have been something going on. And yes, of course, it still is really about resetting your life, resetting your joy. I've actually got my first ever, I'm really incredibly excited. I've developed a 12-week done with you online group coaching program that's going to start in mid-July, and that's called the Realigned Leader. So it's really about realigning yourself to those pillars, those values, those essences of what makes you you, but also that makes a wealthy, in the true sense of the word, person and life. So it's across all those aspects of your health, emotional and physical and mental, your family and relationships. I call it families, friends and foes. So boundary setting, about your values, about who you are, about your authenticity, about what is it that really makes your heart sing and who you want to be and where you want to be. I've got clients who constantly kept saying to me, if only I could have a 26-hour day. And I'd be like, yeah, but you'll only spend 2 more hours working. So I do have a module called the 26-hour day. So it's about that balance. It's about, you know, how do you make better use of your time? And then finance, clearly, a lot of the people I work with, they're not lacking finance. Sometimes they don't feel they've got it. They don't really have a money mindset in so much as however much they see in their bank account, they don't feel it. And it's also that they sometimes feel that that's almost a burden because they're sacrificing, maybe, you know, that poem, he spent his health to gain his wealth, and then with might and main he turned around and spent his wealth to gain his health again. So a lot of them feel that the wealth is coming at a massive cost. So it's really about realigning these leaders or these great performers to having that life of balance and joy. So yeah, I'm very excited, and I did all of that. So lockdown's been a good thing for me in a lot of ways. It's given me a lot of time to grow and reflect and kind of change a little bit.
Wonderful. You seem on rocket fuel at the moment, Ros.
Oh, thank you. I think I just feel authentic, Elaine. I just feel I've arrived at, you know, where I'm supposed to be, and I've always genuinely tried to be that person, but I think I got caught up in some of the hustle and the bustle, and sometimes I would join groups or programs where, you know, it's like, oh, do this, have that funnel, get people in that way. And it never sat comfortably with me, Elaine, never. And I resisted it. And I used to think, oh, I've got a background in PR and marketing. Am I a shoemaker's child? Why is it I'm kicking against this stuff? And I realized it just was that it just didn't really feel authentic to me. Writing the book felt authentic to me. It's a very authentic book. And then I've contributed to 3 more since then in the Ignite series, which are all bestsellers. So Ignite for Women, Ignite Your Female Leadership, and Ignite for Female Change Makers. And I got very emotional and excited when I wrote those chapters. Some of them were very vulnerable and I didn't enjoy the process, but I've grown and grown and grown. And so the iteration of me today isn't me last year or the year before. And so it wasn't quite sitting right about how I was talking about myself. You know, oh, I came through burnout. I help people with burnout. I was like, no, it's more than that. It's really about elevating. It's about going to that next level, because that's genuinely what I'm doing and have done. And I realized when I was working one-on-one with people, they got terribly, and they sent me lovely texts saying like, oh, I love our meetings and you rock. And I'm thinking, I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm maybe not reaching out to other people who that could help. So I am excited and rocking it, because it's like I'm suddenly kind of going, yeah, this just is so right. It's so me. It's so authentic. I'm not trying to do a funnel. I'm not trying to give you a free gift and then sign you up to something. I know that if you give me, it's going to be life-changing, because I'm constantly changing my life.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's truly walking your talk.
Yeah.
You also have 2 podcasts. Tell us about the podcasts.
Well, as you probably can notice, Elaine, I seem to be quite good at speaking. So, and I was very actively involved, as you know, on the radio, but the show, because of being a community studio-based program and me moving, I'm now only a sort of monthly contributor, and I missed that. I launched a podcast. I don't know how long ago I launched my podcast. Well, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, the end of last year, maybe 6 months ago, called Monkey Business, which is really about the monkey mind, the chimp mind. And so I interview leaders about their thinking. So if you think about Stephen Covey's, the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, this is the bit behind. It's like, how do you have the good habit? What goes on in your head when you're having that bad day at work, when you hit the speed bump in the road, when everything looked like it was going wrong or everything was going right? What's going on in your head? So I interview those people about their mindset, really, and about their thinking. And I'll be honest, I don't even know what the reach is or anything, but here's the good news. People are reaching out to me to be interviewed on it. I interviewed a guy yesterday who actually runs the Pandemic podcast.
Oh, fabulous. That's Dan.
Yeah, I interviewed Dan yesterday.
Wonderful.
So that's next week's broadcast. And they approached me and said, and Dan said he loved the interview because I'm really asking about what's his mindset behind stepping out, putting his head above the parapet, actually going against a very popular and overwhelming narrative to actually speak what is his truth. And he said he really enjoyed the interview because it's really digging deep into that rather than talking about the podcast itself. And so that will be broadcast next week. So that's Monkey Business. That's on all the main podcast platforms. And I've got very, very interesting, diverse guests. And I'm just about to launch a new podcast called Life Alchemy. And that came out of a group that I ran on Clubhouse. So I had a big flurry on Clubhouse when it was the new bright, shiny thing. And it's called Coaching Alchemy. And I got together with a bunch of other coaches who I've happened chance to met. And one's Chris Cook, who's a former Olympic swimmer, Team GB swimming medalist. I've got Hema and I've got Sarah, and we all come from very different backgrounds. We're sort of different ages, and yet we're all coaches. It probably ought to be called Coaching Uncovered, who get together and we kind of go, oh, for goodness sake, you know, those people going, oh, you can have a Ferrari and a 6-figure something if you follow me. And we realized that a lot of these people were like the darlings of Clubhouse, and there were thousands and thousands of people turning up to listen to them. And we were like, what's going on? Why? And we're not against success, 100% not. But for me, I suddenly started to realize that I found it an incredible turnoff, because it was that yang energy, that Tony Robbins of the 90s energy. And I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins. I did his PR, as you know, but Tony would admit himself that he was a bit full on in the 90s. You know, it was that, let's stay up for 23 hours. And the only reason you're not a millionaire is it's your limiting beliefs. And that yang energy, that male, like, look at my Ferrari. If you do what I do, you'll have 6 figures. I don't get why people are really buying into that today. So our podcast is really the 4 of us coming together on topics like that. Our first one was yin versus yang energy in leadership and coaching. And today we talked about female leaders, about how we come from places of authenticity, and also sometimes bewilderment as to why that is going on, and how that triggers us, how we would help people who we work with. So we just have the best conversations, and we just decided we'd record them, basically.
Wonderful. It's I've noticed the same as you. The older I get, the less I do, the more cynical I've become, but the less I do and the more I'm achieving, and naturally. And it's wonderful.
100%. And you know what, in the 90s, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I had the PR company and I did Tony Robbins PR and then Edward de Bono and Robert Holden, I worked with Brandon Bayes. You probably know Brandon Bayes.
Yes, I do, yes.
The Journey, and I launched the Journey, and we made it a thing. And I did the Journey, and then Brandon created a second course. I can't remember what it was called, but then she created a third course, and it was called the No Ego Retreat. And clearly, doing people's PR, I did their courses, because how can you be a congruent, authentic PR person if you really don't know what you're talking about? And she actually said to me, "Oh, sorry, Ros, you can't come on the No Ego Retreat." And I was like, "I'm sorry, how can I do your PR? How can I talk about it if I don't come on it?" And she said, "I don't want your energy in the room." And we fell out over it, actually, and we kind of stopped working together. Because I felt it was non-negotiable that I had to go and be on the course, and she felt it was non-negotiable that she didn't want my energy in the room. And looking back, I do see the funny side of it now. I do see that I was in PR, I was wearing designer clothes, I was, living, I was a nice person, but I was still living and giving off that vibe and living in that world, and probably that would have not been congruent with the people in the room working on the No Ego. But her parting words to me were, "Ros, it probably is going to take a long time, but you will reach a point where the less you try, the more you'll succeed." Oh. And that stayed with me. And Elaine, ditto. I'm in that place, and it's a lovely place to be.
It is. I'm at the point where I'm in my mid-60s now, and I'm at the point where I really don't give a flying fig what the ego, what ego, of course I have, need to be in control and all the rest of it, and my opinions, and I'm a strong individual as you are, but we don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore, do we? Whereas when we're younger, we have this kind of pressure on us that we have to be somebody, we have to show that we've got a fast car and a fancy this and a designer whatever and so on and so forth. The peer pressure, the media pressure, the PR pressure, you were living it, weren't you?
Although I'll be actually, oh, was that me? Am I making a weird noise? I'm glad you just mentioned that. I'm making a note to myself, because I cleared out some filing last weekend, really old filing that I'd kept to put in a separate shed here, because we don't lack space. So I've got a shed for my filing. And I found some old stuff from my PR days, and one of them was me, the star letter in PR Week about what a flim-flam artist Max Clifford was. And that was back in the day when he was absolutely lauded as like, oh, he had the Midas touch and he was everything. And I was very outspoken even back then about going, no. And I'd also spoken out about Big Pharma as well, Elaine. I'd actually written a letter saying that I thought that all the people promoting tablets and medicine for Big Pharma should actually take them all themselves. I remember I actually went to a PR event and somebody threw a glass of wine over me because of it.
Oh, well.
Yeah. And so I would like to say that even back in the day, in that slightly bonkers, strange world of PR, I was still treading my own path of authenticity, and I didn't take on clients who I didn't like what they did or didn't feel that their values were right. I mean, ironically, I did work with one cigarette company very early on in my PR days, but it was Death cigarettes, and so they were the first cigarette brand that went, "These will kill you." In fact, the low tar version said, "These will kill you more slowly" on the packet. and I kind of felt, well, it is cigarettes, but it kind of sits with my values. So yeah.
Wonderful. So life is great. Life is absolutely, but it is what we make it, isn't it? But we need all these lessons in order to kind of come out the other side. And
You do.
sometimes,
And I didn't have an easy year last year, Elaine, to be honest. I was very, very tired. I don't know if I've had long COVID or what's going on, and, menopausal. Had some real health, had to really work on it, still am. And after we came out of lockdown, and I'd had sort of 3 months with my partner and then went back to my life, and I had quite a few family issues. I had a rat infestation in my house. That was an absolute mess. They ate through everything, the wiring, the plumbing. It felt like I was in some sort of really nasty kind of zombie movie for a while. And I was really at that place where I was having that shift, that I knew what I was doing was still great, but it just didn't entirely feel right. And I was finding that new alignment. So last year was not easy, but we go through it, don't we? We go through those times. And that's why my book's called Reset. I'm testimony to that. You come through stronger when you go through those things. So I'm definitely, you're meeting me today having trod that path, but I just want to explain to people that it's not always easy, but it does make you strong when you are in your integrity and you learn the lessons and you work out why you're being triggered or maybe why you're feeling how you do, but you have to do the work.
Yeah, and not everybody is prepared to do it, are they?
They're not. They want a quick fix.
Yeah.
They want a quick fix, and I'm clearly trained in, kind of therapy that's called rapid, and often it does really help to get to the root cause and move it on. But I suppose, again, I'm now moving more towards that longer journey with people, because I'm really looking and resonating with the people who are willing to do that longer work and do those bigger journeys and bigger changes. And that's who I want to hang out with as well.
Wonderful. Well, it's nice to hang out with you again, Ros. Very nice.
Thank you. You too. You look well.
Thank you. I am over here in Portugal, therefore I have no complaints. The weather is a lot better in England. Having said that, we get these awful chemtrails, and we can predict. Yeah, we get loads. We can see the planes going backwards and forwards. It's like they're ploughing the fields, but they're ploughing the skies, putting out all this terrible stuff. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Most people don't look up in the sky. Clouds aren't what they used to be. There's this haze everywhere constantly, and that's why we've got so much weather change worldwide, globally. And there's now lots and lots of evidence out there. There's a facility called HAARP, 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 and it's been going for decades, and it's all about transforming the weather. Yeah. So unfortunately, we get that.
I wonder if we're slightly better in Lincolnshire, because the thing I really learned to love about Lincolnshire is the clouds and the skies. We get incredible. That said, we've got a very hazy day today. But normally it's the thing I love about here, and I've learned to love about here. You get these incredible clouds and skies, and I don't know, maybe, who knows? I don't know.
Anyway, it is what it is, as I say. If I have a pound for every time I say that recently, well, it is what it is. So Ros, how do people get hold of you? How do they find out about your podcast if they want to be a guest? How do they find out about your books, your courses, etc.?
So my course isn't even on a website or anything because it's literally so brand new. I do have a brochure for it, but it's really by application. So the best way to find out about that would be to email me, which would be hello@rosalynpalmer.com, rosalynpalmer.com, and any queries, hello@rosalynpalmer.com. Otherwise, go to the website, which is very complicated, www.rosalynpalmer.com, and information about everything I do is there. The podcast Monkey Business is on all the podcast platforms, and Life Alchemy should be on all the podcast platforms in a few weeks, because when the first episode, it takes a little while to load up. So really, hello@rosalynpalmer.com, or go to the website. There's also forms you can fill in. There's loads of freebies. rosalynpalmer.com. That's the best way to get me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Ros.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Love it. Thank you, Elaine.
We'll speak again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.